And war, aggressively targeting the U.S. military and defense contractors in massive cyber attacks over the past 5 years, and without cyber counterattacks from the United States, without any response whatsoever, it appears. Our intelligence agencies asleep, perhaps helpless, as the world's largest nation is at this very moment stealing some of our most sensitive, secret information and technology, threatening America's status as the world's only superpower with the aid of trillions of dollars of U.S. intellectual property stolen over the past several decades. We take it all up tonight with Congressman Matt Gaetz, Asia expert Gordon Chang, cybersecurity expert Morgan Wright. Also tonight, Senate rhinos turning on President Trump as he fights to lead the nation in securing America's borders. Incredibly, the Republican Senate leader, Mitch McConnell, and other Senate Republicans say they're open to the idea of limiting the president's use of emergency declarations. President Trump says his declaration is about one thing: making America safe.
This is really a vote not on constitutionality because it's constitutional. It's not a vote on precedent. This is a vote on border security, and it's a vote on drugs and trafficking and all of that. So, and I think most Republican senators fully understand that. I think it's bad for a Republican senator. I also think it's bad for a Democrat senator to vote against border security and to vote against the wall. I think if they vote that way, it's a very bad thing for them long into the future.
We take up the president's commitment to secure our border and the failure of the Republican Party in Congress to respond to the demands of the president and the American people. Republican National Committee Chair Ronna McDaniel, Republican strategist Ed Rollins, economist and philosopher Thomas Sowell among our guests here tonight. And President Trump today announcing he's grounding Boeing 737 MAX jetliners after deadly crashes in Ethiopia and Indonesia.
We're going to be issuing an emergency order of prohibition to ground all flights of the 737 MAX 8 and the 737 MAX 9. Boeing is an incredible company. They are working very, very hard right now. And hopefully they'll very quickly come up with the answer. But until they do, the planes are grounded.
We address the president's decisive action and his order, the likely consequences of it all here tonight. Our top story: the Red Storm is here. China launching major cyber attacks against the U.S. military and defense contractors, incredibly, without a counterstrike by the United States. Many U.S. intelligence agencies politicized by the Obama administration, they utterly failed to carry out effective counterintelligence operations against China and Russia. After years of neglect, President Trump has demanded better performance from these intelligence agencies and cybersecurity forces. While the president has succeeded in changing the course of events, much more is required. No better example than the Chinese tech giant Huawei, which has become the corporate focus of U.S. counterintelligence operations. One of Huawei's subsidiaries, Huawei Marine, has quietly and without interruption effectively become a dominant force in undersea fiber optic cables through which the world's internet traffic travels. Huawei Marine has built or upgraded 90 undersea fiber optic cables, which gives China control of almost a fourth of all underwater cables. But U.S. intelligence has come up with no strategy to counter Chinese influence and can only warn now that China could disrupt, divert, or spy on data crossing through all of these lines. Joining me now on the national security risk posed by China, the fight for control of the global internet grid, as well as the U.S. Navy now under siege by Chinese cyber attacks, Congressman Matt Gaetz, member of the House Judiciary and Armed Services Committees. Congressman, great to have you with us. This is an extraordinarily disturbing report. This country for 5 years has done absolutely nothing effectively to counter the attacks, cyber attacks by the Chinese in particular.
President Trump is the first president in the modern era to understand the fusion between China's military and strategic interests and the economic game that they have played with fools in the United States for decades. China is not our friend, and they're becoming a more dangerous enemy. But Lou, I bet many of your viewers wouldn't know that today China is actually connecting rural America to telecommunication systems. Here's how they do it. They don't have an innovative sector of their economy because the government runs the economy. So they've replaced innovation with theft. They come and steal intellectual property from American innovators. They then don't have the upfront research and development costs, so they're able to produce and sell that technology cheaply in the United States. And if you're a rural community and you want connectivity, you're taking the cheapest option. Just yesterday in the House Judiciary Committee, we got an admission that the principal Rural Telecommunications Professional Association even allows Huawei to have a seat on their board. Can you believe this, Lou? A foreign company having a seat on the board of the people that are supposed to be connecting our country to information. This is a very serious issue. President Trump imposed $50 billion in tariffs on Chinese intellectual property for this reason. But as you've laid out, this is not just an economic battle. This is a battle that has national security and strategic consequences.
And those consequences are becoming more dire with each passing day. We know that the Chinese are stealing and have been stealing hundreds of billions of dollars a year in intellectual property and technology from this country, as you say, laying a foundation for another superpower with which to contend at our expense. It's mindless. It goes on. We're negotiating apparently now in our trade talks with China to ask them to please, pretty please, with sugar on it, don't steal our stuff, instead of showing them what happens when you do steal our stuff.
Absolutely right, Lou. And when you look at the attacks that China has put on the supply chain in our defense industries, they are going after our areas of most significant importance. Also, keep an eye on China as the Venezuela situation unfolds. China has substantial assets in Venezuela. I don't think they have assets there because they're betting on the future of Venezuela. I think they want assets because it is geopolitically strategic for them to be able to have a force multiplier or capabilities in the Western Hemisphere close by to us. So we've got to keep a very close eye on that.
For the very same reasons that Russia is still maintaining Cuba and also taking its what are laughably called security forces to Venezuela to protect Maduro. Maduro is without question in place for a while, so long as those Russian forces are protecting him. Your thoughts about the future?
Well, I don't want to see U.S. troops on the ground in Latin America, but I do think that we cannot allow these foreign actors to come into the Western Hemisphere with no consequence. So I think in your opening of this segment, you raised the right question. What are we going to do now? And my belief is that we've got to be able to create coalitions that keep China contained, because they have this one belt, one road strategy that is a strategy for global dominance from China, and we've got to wake up to that threat. And by the way, while Democrats in Congress can't stop telling their Russia lies that are all unfounded, the real significant strategic competitor we have is China. And yet China's laughing at the Democrats who want to keep us focused on Russia instead of the real activity that's going on that threatens Americans.
And the radical Dems continue to do everything they can to subvert this president in the face of all of these existential strategic challenges, whether from China, from Russia, or Iran. Matt Gaetz, always good to have you with us. Thank you, Congressman. Up ahead, we take up the rise of the radical left and their socialist ideas with economist Thomas Sowell. Plus, President Trump reminds the rhinos and radical Dems what his national emergency declaration is all about.
The massive surging flow of illegal immigration, trafficking, drugs, and crime threaten the safety and security of all Americans.
We take that up and more right after the break. RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel joins us here next. We need rhinos. There are plenty of them in the Republican Party, folding on the president's national emergency declaration. Mitch McConnell whining, saying this, quote, "There's a lot of discomfort with the law, not that the president doesn't have the authority to do what he's doing." Now, what in the world does that mean? And today, Senator Mike Lee becomes the fifth Republican to announce in the Senate that he will vote against the president, likely forcing a veto. Joining me now, RNC Chair Ronna McDaniel, who is, I think, the best head of the RNC in decades. Good to see you.
It's Always good to be here.
Explain to me, in your party, these rhinos, and I say that with as much disgust as I can emanate, they are just ridiculous in their thinking, their performance, and their failure to support a president who, in most cases, that's the only reason these people have been reelected.
Well, I will tell you, I've been traveling the country. I'm in touch with the grassroots. I'm also in touch with the donors. And they're saying to me, you know, Democrats do one thing. They're in lockstep with each other all the time.
Absolutely.
And why can't we do that as a party? And obviously there's room for discussion and these things, but we all ran on border security. We all recognized that we had an immigration issue. All of these senators recognize that. We know the president's doing the right thing to keep our country safe. He needs to be supported. Yeah.
I will tell you straight up, I think every senator who votes against this should absolutely be removed from office. I mean, I think the RNC should work to get rid of them because they're standing in the way of a president who is the most successful in the first 2 years of his presidency since FDR. And it's that straightforward.
Well, I will say I've heard a lot of feedback from our voters, and they are saying, why can't our people support our president? We elected him, and it's going to be an issue for those who are especially up in 2020. Our president deserves support. He ran on this. And by the way, he has congressionally allotted the powers to declare a national emergency. This is something that he's doing well within his capacity as president.
It's a 43-year-old act.
We do, right? And it's been used 58 times since then. But we also have a serious problem at our border, and that's the real issue.
Emergency. There's no question.
He ran on it. We know it's a problem. What, 268,000 people so far have been apprehended at the border at the beginning of this year. It's up 300%.
Right. We're looking at 1 million that will be apprehended.
Yeah.
We're looking at the ratio of those who are not apprehended to those apprehended. That means there could be as many as 4 million illegal immigrants cross our border this year, and these damn fools are saying there isn't a crisis at our border.
So the president's going to veto this. It's going to go to the House. They won't have enough to override it, so it is going to go forward. But I do think, as I travel, that's the one thing I hear. Why do Democrats always stick together, and why can't Republicans stick with this president?
Well, let's start out with Paul Ryan. Yesterday, talking about he didn't think that the president could win if it was based on the president. I mean, what kind of an ignoramus is he?
Well, he's backtracked that today. He has backtracked that.
It took 24 hours.
Yeah, it took 24 hours, but...
That's actually an accelerated evidence of...
And here's the reality, Lou, is what do we want? Do we want a Kamala
I want people
Harris?
like Ryan the hell out of the party.
Do you want
That's
a Cory
what I
Booker?
want.
I mean, every time we attack our president, we're helping the Democrats. And that's the reality.
Well, Ryan was the Speaker of the House. He did nothing but lie to the president, lie to the American people, and represent the Chamber of Commerce every day in every way. Why is he even considered?
Well, I'm glad he's backtracked. He's done the right thing. And we need to support our president heading into a presidential year, a president who, by the way, has added jobs, grown wages, cut regulation, taken on our national security, made us stronger, taken on ISIS. I mean, this is a president
We've
got a great president. And
absolutely.
He deserves our support. And we want him to win again. Look at where the Democrats are. Every time you attack this president, you're helping the Democrats. That's what I say to our party. So, yeah, I have a disagreement. Pick him up, pick up the phone, call the president. But let's make sure we recognize the end game. We want to reelect Donald Trump. We want to return our majority to the Senate, and we want to win the House back.
All right, let me get your sense of things right now. This president working every day, almost single-handedly, to stave off his attackers in the left-wing national media, the radical Dems, and the rhinos in his own party. What more can the Republican Party do? How can you turn it around, fight for this president, make it clear? And I'm talking in the Senate, the House, Republican leaders, governors across the country. Start fighting for this president because this is ignorance. The witch hunt, the bizarre revelations that continue to this day. The only ones who've been found culpable of anything in all of this collusion bull have been the investigators.
Yeah, well, and Fusion GPS and the Democrat Party who paid them and Hillary Clinton. I mean, this is just ridiculous.
So why can't the Republicans turn the table?
The 168 RNC members recently put a unanimous resolution forward supporting this president. The RNC is in lockstep supporting this president. I work with him every day. I work with the campaign. And you know what? It's not It's because of the great things he has done to save our country. He has taken on every single obstacle. He has so many headwinds coming against him, and we do need to rally around this president because he is making our country great again.
He has single-handedly gutted the very premise of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
He has raised employment for minorities, for African Americans, for Hispanics, Asians, women. He has this economy growing at 3%. He's unwound all of the regulation that was put in place.
And let's not forget the judges.
But most of it put in place.
But
the damn fools follow.
I hope so too.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Ronna McDaniel. We'd like to hear your thoughts about all of this. Share your comments. Follow me on Special Counsel finds no matter what Robert Mueller says about the facts, the hell with all of that. They're going to continue witch hunts and more witch hunts. Ed Rollins joins me here next with all of that and much more. Before we go to break, we want to take an amusing look at the U.S. national debt, $22 trillion and climbing. Uh-oh. We'll be right back after this. Stay with us. Of the president, the Department of Justice investigating, are you ready for this? Whether a $100,000 donation to President Trump's re-election committee in 2016 was made by a foreign donor. The donation suddenly under scrutiny by the Department of Justice as it was allegedly from a fugitive Malaysian businessman. 2 years later, and suddenly somebody... You can't make this stuff up. Joining me now, former Reagan White House political director, leading national Republican strategist, Fox Business political analyst, Ed Rollins. Ed, great to see you.
Thank you.
I so enjoyed talking with Ronna McDaniel.
She's great.
If the Republican Party were led by folks like her,
she's fabulous.
The Democrats could just fold up and go home.
She's tireless. She's gone from one end of this country to the other. She's a great role model. She was a great party person in Michigan. And my sense is she's done a superb job. This thing is an absurd. We had one of the best election lawyers, McCann, who became the White House counsel. He'd been chairman of the FEC.
The question about the $100,000.
He knew every law. And the idea that the president's supposed to know everything goes on in this campaign, that's just not the way it works. You have lawyers, you have accountants, you have people who look at it.
Yeah, but we're 2 years beyond the fact.
And then when they still never touched Hillary Clinton, who had I mean, Bill Clinton had him, and she had him. They had all kinds of foreign money.
When are Republicans going to say, I've had a belly full, no more of this nonsense, go on the attack, and by God, at least make it fair?
Well, we need to do it, and again we say.
But you know, Republicans keep saying it, but they don't.
Republicans are not fighters. They rather fight among themselves.
Well, you know, it's time for the little darlings to get out of the way then, because if they're not going to fight, what good are they?
It's even like this new thing on the changing the emergency laws of the president. It's one thing. It's bad enough to vote against the president when he's doing this thing, but to decide you're going to change the law. This is a law that was put in by the Democrats, and it's just ridiculous. They ought to decide this is his priority.
Well, let's not give it more time than we need to.
Absolutely. All right.
Because it's just stupid. Let's talk about Mitch McConnell. He apparently wants to undercut the president on the issue of his emergency declaration, his powers to declare an emergency. What in the world is this man thinking?
He's trying to play to his little dissident group that he has there, and it's ridiculous. When I was in the White House, I used to handle the emergency. You know, they could be everything from a flood to a fire to what have you.
Right.
It's very important the president be able to react quickly, as he did today on the Boeing thing. We have a crisis on this border. Congress will not act. This president has to act, and they have to basically give him the money to do what he has to do. And for McConnell ought to be leading the charge on that. And even
McConnell doesn't seem to lead anything except the rhinos who want to undercut this president, and to align himself with the idea of cutting back this president's powers right now. Where would we be if we didn't have a president who was decisive, strong, knew where he wanted to take the country?
Well, we'd be in terrible shape, and it's hard enough. It's hard enough as it is to make this game work. But my sense is,
listen to these names: rhinos. I don't know if we've got a full screen of this, but it is quite revealing. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Tom Tillis, Rand Paul, Mike Lee. All of them eccentric, unreliable rhinos who are not deep thinkers. Let's be really straightforward about this. They seem to come out of the woodwork at every instance in which you actually need a vote, and they use their votes as a way to differentiate between themselves and the Republican Party. These are preposterous individuals.
When you have a small majority, which we do, you have to have every single vote. You have to have a discipline to make sure that everybody does vote with us. You're going to find these same 5, 6 names for the next 2 years. Every major issue the president needs, they'll basically be cutting their own deals off, drifting off, or not voting with him. The bottom line here is they need to vote with him. This is his agenda, their agenda. They all ran on it, and we need to get it done.
Well, and Ryan comes out attacking the president yesterday, and today tries to walk it back like nothing happened. This is the most disgusting, appalling political figure on Capitol Hill, and now just on the loose.
I assume he got the daylights beat out of him when he came out with a statement about the president a couple of days ago, which is causing the reversal. It's not all of a sudden he wants clarity. He wants clarity because he's getting beat up on. He
wants clarity. What are you talking about?
Well, he basically said one statement the other day that he wouldn't win on his personality. He has to work on policies, the policies being his policies. The bottom line is Trump won on the strength of his personality last time.
Well, he comes out today and acknowledges all he's achieved. But he's so ignorant, he is so dense, and he is so out of touch. Why in the world is...
Well, he's no longer there, and we shouldn't have to listen to him anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Where do I sign up for that?
Right here at Fox.
You got it. Please no. Please no. Say it's not true. Let's go to the full screens real quickly. Well, no, let's not. We haven't got time for that. Ed, you want to give us a thought about how that's going to wind up the emergency declaration?
He's going to probably lose the vote in the Senate by the Republicans we listed here. It's going to be his first veto. Nothing wrong with vetoing. They haven't got a snowball's chance in heck of overriding his veto, and it's a good place to draw the line in the sand and fight. It's fighting for his border wall, and that's the key thing.
And by the way, we've got a full screen. I just want to put this up for Mitch McConnell's benefit, if I may do that, Majority Leader. If we could put up the Trump versus McConnell in Kentucky. The approval ratings, the president has a 53% approval rating. McConnell has a 33%. And for the life of me, I don't know how he got 33%. Ed Rollins, thank you very much.
It's pretty obvious.
Yes, it is. It should be, you would think.
You'd think.
But usually that's only for, never mind.
Whatever.
Ed, thanks so much. You're leading me down a path to perdition. Up next, China. Using companies like Huawei to infiltrate key digital infrastructure, posing significant threat to the United States. And guess what? The United States, until now, not doing anything about it. Asia expert Gordon Chang, cybersecurity expert Morgan Wright join me right after the break with much more. Stay with us. Headlines tonight: President Trump grounding all Boeing 737 MAX 8 and 9 aircraft in the United States until more information is gathered about the cause of a deadly Ethiopian crash. The FAA also saying enhanced satellite images and new evidence found at the scene of the Ethiopian air crash led to the president's decision. Former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort sentenced in Washington, D.C. to an additional 43 months in jail. Previous convictions in Virginia means Manafort will spend a total of nearly 7 years behind bars. And the UK's House of Commons rejected the idea of leaving the European Union without a Brexit deal in place. But on the other hand, they don't have a Brexit plan in place. So they vote again tomorrow on whether Britain's official departure date could be extended till beyond March 29th. In other words, the establishment is winning the war against a popular vote in the United Kingdom. Quite a mess. Joining us tonight, Morgan Wright, former senior advisor in the State Department's Anti-Terrorism Assistance Program, former law enforcement advisor to the RNC's cybersecurity expert, and columnist, author, Asia expert Gordon Chang. Gentlemen, good to have you with us. Let me start with first this undersea battle that we just reported on here tonight. And Morgan, we're talking about 25%. China's in control of 25% of undersea cables, fiber optic in the world.
Look, and it's growing, too. They're just completing a 7,500-mile project to connect Europe, Asia, and Africa. So, and Lou, let's put this in perspective. 95% of all intercontinental data, that's data that flows between, goes over undersea cables. So the fact is they're now in a position where they're controlling at least 1/4 of all the information that's moving around the world. That includes sensitive law enforcement information, intelligence information, stuff that may be passed around over the internet, even though it's encrypted. These guys have the keys to the kingdom now and they're underbidding everybody who's involved. This is how they're using the state banks to win these deals. They're underbidding everybody, and what they're doing is buying espionage.
And Gordon, why isn't the United States, first of all, why did we permit it? And secondly, why are we doing nothing right now?
Well, this president is trying to do something about what the Chinese have been doing. You know, we found out, for instance, last October, those Tel Aviv University professor and Naval War College professor, they told us that China Telecom, which is the state telecom, has been diverting internet traffic from the United States and Canada into China, where they have been surveilling it and taking it. And clearly, this is not just a theoretical concern.
It's almost, gentlemen, become like that commercial. Where the security guard talks about he monitors, he doesn't stop. The intelligence agencies of this country are a laughing stock, attacking a sitting president. While permitting China and Russia and Iran and God knows who else to just simply run over the United States, steal our intellectual property, our technology, to rifle through the files as they will of the U.S. government and major corporations. Why is there no retaliation?
You know, that's a good question, and that gets down into the politics of it. I'll tell you, Lou, last time I think we talked, one of the things I was adamant on, and I know Gordon said something similar, the way we attack these guys, we have to go after them in a way economically and put people like Huawei and ZTE out of business to where they can no longer supply the infrastructure that's being used to undercut us around the world. At some point, look, this is the slowest their economy's grown in over 30 years. We ought to be on the offense right now and taking these guys. We did it with the sale to 3Com. Sprint kept them out of the network. We kept them out of the National Public Safety Network here in the United States. There are ways we can go after this, but it takes political will, and one man, even the president, cannot do this alone. It still requires the support of Congress.
And they almost went into our financial markets, taking over the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. But that was stopped by this administration. What in the world is it going to take here to understand for our national leadership, Wall Street, corporate America, to understand that they have got to start supporting this nation and react?
You know, one of the reasons why we don't have stronger cybersecurity laws and better defenses is because the business lobby has tried to water down every proposal that has gotten to Congress. And by the way, Lou, yes, it's great that the administration stopped the Chicago Stock Exchange acquisition by China, but we know that the Chinese are coming after us again because in these trade talks that we now have with Beijing, they want to be able to access and participate in our electronic payment system, which again would put them into the backbone.
So what are we to do? What are we to do? And the question arises, why in the world would we be in trade talks with a country, Morgan, that is attacking our military, attacking our corporations, our financial markets every day?
Look, the RAND Corporation just did a war game study. What they found out is that if World War III were fought today, the Russians and the Chinese would hand us our collective rear ends because we're not prepared to stop them. We lose in every single engagement. That's militarily and cyber-wise too. So they keep hitting the snooze button on the wake-up calls. How many wake-up calls does it take? Will it take crashed airliners to get their attention? I don't know, but I can tell you this: it doesn't get any worse than the report that just came out that was released to the Navy Secretary, talking about the pathetic state of cybersecurity in the defense industrial base, the contractors who are bleeding intellectual property and secrets to the Chinese. The Chinese haven't invented anything original in years. What they've done is stolen everything, including the Joint Strike Fighter designs. Their stealth fighter is based on our stuff. Supersonic missiles used to take out carriers. Guess what? All courtesy of the United States and our pathetic cybersecurity in this defense industrial base.
So why, Gordon, isn't this country talking about this? Why aren't we doing something? Why are we engaging in trade talks when we should be having, actually, frankly, truce talks? Because we need to retaliate against any aggressor. Even Obama put out a declaration, doctrinal, that we would consider these attacks an act of war.
Yeah, and what we've seen in the national security strategy...
He didn't do anything.
He didn't do anything.
Put out the doctrine.
I mean, he had that agreement with Xi Jinping. We don't want to go there. Okay. But, you know, clearly the national security strategy of President Trump, released last December, is a landmark document because he does name the Chinese and the Russians, and that really is the first step.
Now we've got everybody named. We know who our enemies are. What are we going to do about it, and what is it going to take to begin to defend the assets of this country and this country?
Okay, first of all, as Morgan said, you go after their economy. They're weak right now. Also, these tariffs that the president has put on, the Section 301 tariffs.
Oh, for crying out loud. If you're going to talk to me about sanctions, and look at Russia, look at Iran, every country that we've ever put sanctions on, it's had no effect. Right now, we're watching the Russians, Morgan. They've added over 100 ICBMs for the land force, 100 more than another 100 since 2012 for this for their submarine force. I mean, what are we thinking here?
Look, the budget was just released. It's $750 billion for the Department of Defense, and people are already screaming it's a 5% increase. Let me tell you, you want to know what's expensive? Not a 5% increase in the defense budget. Fighting a war we're totally and wholly unprepared for, and that's World War III. Somebody says it could be by the mid-2020s. A lot of the analysts are saying that. That's where the expense comes in. Look, we're not. It's not that we're spending the right amount on it. We're not spending enough.
Let me be very clear. We're not complaining about the expense. I applaud this president and his rebuilding our military. I am talking about what are we to do now. The fact of the matter is we don't have sufficient numbers of cruise missiles. We don't have sufficient ordnance. We don't have sufficient a sufficient fleet, a surface force that would, you know, keep up with it with the Chinese.
Well, one thing, Lou, is we disengage from the Chinese economy because our commerce gives them the proceeds in which they build up their military. That's a first start, and the president is starting to do that. Now, we got a long way to go, but we're going on the road.
Morgan Wright, you get the last word here.
Hey, look, Red Adair one time said, you know, if you think hiring a professional is expensive, wait till you hire an amateur. If we keep letting the amateurs run this, it's going to get really expensive. Trump is on the right path. Spend more money during peacetime to get what they call the third offset. We've got to change the tactical advantage, but as long as we let the Russians and the Chinese steal our artificial intelligence, you know, and our advanced technologies, we'll be on the losing end of the next engagement.
And unfortunately, the very people from whom they're stealing that intellectual property are on the other side, not our side. In most of these instances, they've got to end their roles as it has been put, unregistered foreign agents, and start thinking as Americans. Thank you very much, Morgan. Good to see you. We appreciate it.
Lou.
Gordon, thank you.
Thanks, Lou.
So much. Up next, the radical left's embrace of socialism and what it means for, well, her future. Maybe the future of the country. Think about that. Thomas Sowell joins me here right after the break. We'll take that up and much more. One of the country's leading economists and philosopher kings, in my opinion. Stay with us. Consider reading every page of it. A fascinating book, as you would expect from a fascinating thinker. Thomas, good to have you with us. We appreciate it. Let's start
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Well, it's an honor to have you, and I just want to get a few of your thoughts tonight about the idea of discrimination, and I loved your analysis of various iterations of discrimination, and also starting with informed critical judgment.
Well, there's an awful lot to be said about discrimination. One of the problems is that people seem to assume that in the absence of discrimination, people would be more or less proportionally represented in various endeavors and so forth. And that goes completely against both logic and evidence. I can read reams of statements by people with a social justice vision and never find a single example of where there's any country anywhere in the world where people are proportionally represented in any endeavor, unless the government has put out an explicit quota.
And the truth of the matter is, when when President Trump talks about a meritocracy replacing our current immigration system, Your reaction to it, because to me it makes all the sense in the world that it should be meretricious.
Yes, because that's how the whole standard of living is produced. It's not produced by imagining. You know, there are groups who have specific skills who are just tremendous in some particular things, and for almost any group, there's some activity in which they not only hold their own, but excel. And so this theory that they should all be, take the demographics alone. Right. Why should we expect that Jewish, Japanese Americans, Mormons, all of whom have median ages around 50, that they should be proportionally represented in baseball with Hispanics with an average age somewhere in the 20s? Right. I mean, 50-year-old men don't play baseball as well as men in their 20s. And
none of us seem to get better at it as we age.
Absolutely.
I want to turn to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez because she has thunderstruck the national media. She's become something of a darling advocate for socialism, and she stands in marked contrast to the lights going out in Venezuela. Cuba still locked up in a stasis of 7 decades in which there is no improvement in the standard of living. It's an utterly failed system everywhere it has been attempted in this hemisphere.
This is the scariest thing about the great enthusiasm for socialism. It's happening while people are literally starving in Venezuela, desperately fleeing to other countries, looting stores for food. Socialism is a wonderful sounding idea. I was once a Marxist myself as a young man. It's only as I began to study facts that I became appalled at what actually happens. What's projected sounds wonderful, but what baffles me is why people don't look at any facts anymore, or a great number don't.
Yeah, the absence of facts, it afflicts our media greatly. The empirical is almost irrelevant, and an opinion often not tethered at all to any facts has become the order of the day as they attack this president and all that he's accomplished. Your thoughts?
Well, you know, one of the things that strikes me is so much of what is said about, for example, the top 10% or the top 20% or the top 400, most people don't realize that just over half of all Americans are going to be in the top 10% of income at some point in their lives. So when they talk about this group as if this is an ongoing set of people rather than a constantly changing mixture, that is, most Americans do not stay in the same 20% of the income spread from one decade to the next. And yet we talk about these people as if it's the same people who are in all these decades. One of the things I discovered was that the